One of the ways to buy German long-term bonds is through the Deutsche Finanzagentur, or the German Finance Agency. This is the central service provider for the federal government's borrowing and debt management. The Deutsche Finanzagentur offers various products and services for investors who want to invest in German bonds. The first step is to register as a customer on the Deutsche Finanzagentur website. You will need to provide some personal and financial information, such as your name, address, bank account details, and tax identification number. You will also need to agree to the terms and conditions of the Deutsche Finanzagentur. The second step is to choose the type of bond you want to buy. The Deutsche Finanzagentur issues different types of bonds with different maturities, interest rates, and payment dates. You can find the current and upcoming bond issues on the website, along with their characteristics and prices. You can also use the bond calculator to compare different bonds and see their expected returns. The third step is to place your order. You can do this online or by phone. You will need to specify the amount and the price of the bond you want to buy. You can either enter a limit order, which means you set a maximum price you are willing to pay, or a market order, which means you accept the current market price. You will also need to indicate whether you want to buy the bond at auction or on the secondary market. The fourth step is to pay for your order. The Deutsche Finanzagentur will debit your bank account on the settlement date, which is usually 2 business days after the order date. You will receive a confirmation of your order and payment by email or post. The fifth step is to receive your bond certificate and interest payments. The Deutsche Finanzagentur will issue an electronic bond certificate that you can access online or print out. You will also receive regular interest payments on your bond, either annually or semi-annually, depending on the type of bond. The interest payments will be credited to your bank account on the payment date. The sixth and final step is to sell or redeem your bond. You can sell your bond at any time on the secondary market through the Deutsche Finanzagentur website or by phone. You will receive the market price of your bond minus a transaction fee. Alternatively, you can hold your bond until maturity and redeem it at face value. The Deutsche Finanzagentur will credit your bank account with the principal amount of your bond on the maturity date. In this section, we will learn how to analyze the yield curve of German long-term bonds and compare it with other countries' bonds, such as the US, UK, Japan, and Australia. The yield curve is a graph that shows the relationship between the interest rate and the time to maturity of a bond. The yield curve can help us understand the expectations of investors and the economic conditions of a country. A normal yield curve is upward sloping, meaning that bonds with longer maturities have higher yields than bonds with shorter maturities. This is because investors demand a higher return for lending money for a longer period of time, as they face more risks such as inflation, default, and interest rate changes. An inverted yield curve is downward sloping, meaning that bonds with shorter maturities have higher yields than bonds with longer maturities. This is usually a sign of an impending recession, as investors expect lower interest rates and lower economic growth in the future. A flat yield curve means that the yields of bonds with different maturities are almost equal. This can indicate a transition period between economic cycles, or a situation where the central bank has a strong influence on the interest rates. To analyze the yield curve of German long-term bonds, we can use the data from the World Government Bonds website, which provides the yields of German government bonds with different maturities. As of May 21, 2023, the yield curve of German long-term bonds was inverted, as shown in the following table. Residual maturity yield: 1 month 2.909%, 3 months 2.927%, 6 months 2.975%, 9 months 3.176%, 1 year 3.147%, 2 years 2.813%, 3 years 2.560%, 4 years 2.438%, 5 years 2.423%, 6 years 2.391%, 7 years 2.336%, 8 years 2.377%, 9 years 2.393%, 10 years 2.457%, 15 years 2.666%, 20 years 2.663%, 25 years 2.591%, 30 years 2.621%. We can see that the yields of bonds with shorter maturities are higher than the yields of bonds with longer maturities, indicating an inverted yield curve. This suggests that investors are pessimistic about the future prospects of the German economy and expect lower interest rates and lower inflation in the long run. To compare the yield curve of German long-term bonds with other countries' bonds, we can use the data from the Nasdaq website, which provides the yields of U.S. Treasury bonds with different maturities. As of May 20, 2023, the yield curve of U.S. Treasury bonds was normal, as shown in the following table. Residual maturity yield: 1 month 0.021%, 3 months 0.031%, 6 months 0.042%, 1 year 0.061%, 2 years 0.173%. 3 years 0.328%, 5 years 0.674%, 7 years 1.026%, 10 years 1.382%, 20 years 1.928%, 30 years 2.138%. We can see that the yields of bonds with longer maturities are higher than the yields of bonds with shorter maturities, indicating a normal yield curve. This suggests that investors are optimistic about the future prospects of the U.S. economy and expect higher interest rates and higher inflation in the long run. We can also use the data from the Investopedia website, which provides a chart that compares the yield curves of different countries as of January 2022.